Here is my theory regarding Elbaph, a theory which, besides observing hints from the story itself, is based on clues from Norse mythology, which is evidently an inspiration for the Elbaph arc, as well as the story of Broly from both Dragon Ball Z and Super, plus Marvel's Loki. Marvel's Loki obviously somewhat inspired Loki in One Piece, just from the characteristic helmet alone, and as for the other franchises, I've made videos on how they have insane similarities with the Elbaph arc so far, and you should check them out for more details. Let's begin by mentioning my previous video where I explained a bunch of reasons why Loki and Kaido are likely brothers, but I've made an insane discovery since that adds to that theory, as well as give us more things to work with on the Elbaph situation as a whole. It is about King Harald's children names and their alphabetic order. Let's begin by assuming Kaido is indeed a son of King Harald. Then we have L for Loki right next to K. This is already a hint that they are indeed related. But then we have H for Hyrudin. So if only I and J were filled, we'd get 5 names in alphabetic order. Now check this out. In Norse mythology, Loki has 4 siblings. Therefore, I speculate that 2 more children of King Harald will be revealed. One whose name starts with I and one with J. Furthermore, I wanna emphasize how, again, assuming Kaido is indeed King Harald's son, all 3 siblings differ racially to each other. Loki, with his horns and huge size, resembles an ancient giant like Ors. Hyrudin is like a regular giant, and Kaido is like an ancient giant and buccaneer hybrid. A few chapters prior, Skopper Gaban points out that mixed-race people have existed throughout history, mentioning buccaneers, dosundadas, long leg, long necks, and wotans, some of which we don't know anything about yet, but it's a hint that we will, and perhaps soon. He adds that such hybrids are rare and struggle to survive on their own, but in every era there have always been those who are more flexible. You see where I'm going with this? I think King Harald was one of the more flexible ones who decided to procreate with various different races. His flexible attitude could also be reflected in the way he pushed for a more peaceful Elbaph, contrary to the traditional war culture. Here is a fact about the historical King Harald, the first king of Norway, who likely inspired his One Piece counterpart. He had 20 children and 7 wives. So with that fact, along with the fact that Loki in Norse mythology is one of 5 siblings, and given the first letters of his known children allowing for 2 more children to put all of them in alphabetic order, it is very likely that he had 2 more children from different wives we have yet to meet. Come on, the man is said to have had 20 children in real life. He has to have at least 5 in One Piece and not just 3, right? In that way, he is a combination of Norway's King Harald and Farbauti, the father of Loki in Norse mythology. Now, I initially thought 2 daughters are to be expected for the remaining siblings because Norse Loki's 2 of the 4 siblings are female. But there is a chance I have found 1 more male as one of the 5. You see, after my realization that the 5 siblings must have each a mother of different race, first race that came to mind were of course fishmen. I knew that we have to see a giant fishman hybrid, but quickly realized that we've probably seen that already. And with his name's initial letter being J, everything connected. I'm talking about Jack the Drought. We know Jack is partly fishman, and based on how massive he is, it is not unlikely that his father was King Harald, with his mother being a fish woman, which could justify Jack's big size on its own, but doesn't explain his horns. I don't want to dive deeper here and might make a separate video on that. I also believe the last sibling with the letter I as his name's initial letter will be of female gender, and we should meet her on Elbaph, with her being a child very possible. Now, there should be a contrast to the racially flexible ideology of King Harald, and this is where things get interesting. So, in Norse mythology there were 2 most important groups of gods. The group Loki belonged in were the Vanir, and they were at war with the Aesir. The Aesir include the most notable gods in the Norse pantheon, such as Thor and Odin. We know of 3 levels on Elbaph Island: the realm of the dead at the bottom, where wild beasts run around and Loki is imprisoned; the Sun Realm in the middle where regular giants live, and then there is the Heaven Realm, for which we know nothing about yet as of chapter 1142. What is remaining to be residing up there given beasts and regular giants occupy the lower levels? It is of course gods. I think it's safe to assume up there lies an aristocracy of giant so-called gods who are racially homogeneous and seek to dominate everyone else. Consider also the name Heaven Realm parallels the Holy Land Yugioh, where Sabo mentioned that he didn't expect to find hell on top of the world. It is an inversion where being called heaven is in reality the place devils rule, and the realm of the dead is where the righteous prince, sun god, lays imprisoned, as we'll find out. God's knights are likewise devil's knights, contrary to what their name suggests. We learned Loki wields a hammer called Ragnir, inspired from Mjolnir, Thor's hammer in Norse mythology. This is where Marvel Loki's story comes into play, where Marvel Loki has stolen Thor's hammer on multiple occasions. The way Haryudin tells Loki to put the Ragnir down also make it seem kinda like it's not his own weapon but rather a well-known weapon that came to his possession. Many fans wondered why they didn't take that away prior to locking him up, and I speculate they couldn't, because regular folks can't wield it, as well as it returning to the user like its inspiration Mjolnir is known to do. Looking at the Harley mural, my position is that the left side where the big fight takes place is the third world prophecy that has yet to be fulfilled. So, assuming that incarnation of Nika is Luffy, we see a giant figure next to him strongly resembling Loki. The thing is, he is not holding a hammer but a spear. That could make someone believe it is a different timeline or another character rather than Loki. But guess what? Loki in Norse mythology is traditionally using a spear, likewise with his Marvel counterpart. All of that supports my theory that Loki actually stole the Ragnir from Thor. I believe Loki will turn out to be an edgy but overall good guy tagging along with the Straw Hats for the final war, as depicted in the mural, but he will have his spear back by then, and give up the Ragnir. I believe that like Vanir were at war with the Aesir, King Harald's royal family also were at odds with the Heaven Realm gods in One Piece, but instead of them joining forces in the end like in the myth, they still haven't solved their issues. Many wondered what was the purpose for which Haryudin sought to acquire the Fire Logia Mera Mera no Mi in Dressrosa, and some speculated it was to rival Loki. But Loki was chained up for years already. I speculate that some tyrant god up in the Heaven Realm is using ice-related abilities. When talking with Luffy, Loki says, "They wanted to sweep me under the rug." Who is they? He is probably referring to the same elite of the Heaven Realm who wanted him banished down there to begin with. When Loki is talking through the Denden Mushi to a person called Mosa, the way he refers to them in the Japanese original suggests they are some kind of noble. Mosa spoke to Loki about a moment of true fear being his biggest motivation, and Loki asserted that if he were in his stead, he would turn that place into ruin and slaughter the lot of them. Who is he referring to and where is that place? I speculate they are talking about the aristocrats of the Heaven Realm, who harassed Mosa for an unknown reason, even though they seem to be part of their collective. As I said, the Heaven Realm gods are likely pure-blooded ancient giants with horns or some other rare race of giants. Loki seems to also be a pure-blooded ancient giant, which means King Harald likely had him with a giantess from the upper realm, which could have been prohibited for some reason, even though Harald himself looks like an ancient giant, but perhaps it is the fact that he removed his own horns, essentially separating himself from their ranks. The giants did hold Loki's mother in high regard, calling her the Horse of Fortune, and given that she likely was from the Heaven Realm, she could potentially help the two groups come to terms. But she died and therefore they never progressed to peace, which mirrors Loki's marriage with Lola that would affiliate the giants with Big Mom pirates, but ultimately failed. There is also a possibility that King Harald was somehow forced to remove his own horns, as I think it is something no prideful giant would willingly do. and perhaps it is the reason why he looks so angered in his portrait. It is not out of hate but from shame. Pride is the most important element of Giants' culture. Much like Saiyans, their Dragon Ball counterpart, Loki, given his lineage and perhaps his power level as a baby, was deemed a threat and was banished to the realm of the dead for that reason, which resulted in him not being trained properly and therefore struggled to control his power and whatnot. King Harald likely hated that, but I guess there was nothing he could do about it. It is probably the reason why Kaido was sent away from Elbaph as well as Jack, if they are indeed brothers. Alternatively, King Harald could have had them when traveling in other islands. As we know, Haryudin's mother was a giantess from another nation. In chapter 1142, we're now seeing God's Knights running a plan involving the giant children, suggesting the significance of childhood in this arc. A fight broke out at some point between King Harald's and the Heaven Realms factions, where I think Loki stepped in and beat Thor, taking his hammer, and that was probably when King Harald died as well. The legendary Devil Fruit should also have played a part in the war between these two factions. The battle went down at the palace, so the Heaven Realms gods probably came after that fruit. Loki stepped in to defend it and ate the fruit as a last resort to protect it when they took down his father, something that gave him the edge in the fight to survive. I believe Loki didn't kill his father. There should have been tension in their relationship, but he ultimately tried to protect him. After the incident, Loki left Elbaph, which could be because he couldn't stay there anymore due to the implications of the war. That's when Shanks comes in, and I can't tell the hows and whys of him capturing Loki and bringing him back to Elbaph to have him imprisoned. What we know is Loki calls him a coward, which we know Shanks isn't, but there has to be more to Loki's capture. With Shanks being a stabilizing force in the world of One Piece, I can see him being the middleman trying to make the two factions of Elbaph come to terms, but we just lack information at this point to draw any conclusions. Now, as for how the arc will unfold from now on, it is known that One Piece arcs often mirror previous arcs, and in the case of Elbaph, I think it mirrors the Marineford War, as well as the God Valley incident. The Marineford War was a tragedy Luffy had to face with his brother Ace being killed. I think the Elbaph arc will also end up as a tragedy, kickstarting the final war, when Luffy in the end fails to protect the island of Elbaph itself, which will be Ace's counterpart in this arc. The God Valley incident involved Goldie Roger as well as the God's Knights, who held a native hunting competition in which an island's native population is rounded up and kept captive in cages to be later released and hunted down for sport throughout the tournament, with problematic slaves and criminals also being employed as additional game if necessary. For the purpose of the event, the hunted all have a target symbol on their back and are referred to as rabbits. The island of God Valley ended up mysteriously vanishing after the incident's conclusion, leaving no trace of its existence behind, and no longer showing up on maps of the world, most likely as a result of the ancient weapon Uranus being employed by Imu, just like when he erased the Lulusia kingdom from history. With the God's Knights trapping children and Samrock mentioning they can make a game out of it, everything points to another God Valley incident that will conclude with Elbaph's destruction. I mentioned before the similarities between Loki's arc and Dragon Ball's Broly. While Loki is a giant, Broly is a Saiyan, and his planet, the Elbaph Island's counterpart, was destroyed in its entirety by a merciless tyrant called Frieza, Imu's counterpart in Dragon Ball. Furthermore, in Broly, the legendary Super Saiyan movie, Broly's father Paragus, who looks very similar to King Harald, attempts to revive the Saiyan race on a new planet, which is also destroyed by the end of the movie by a comet, which is the Uranus counterpart in that movie. The parallels are not one-to-one, but everything points to Elbaph being erased from existence. Again, watch my Loki Broly videos for more information. To summarize, King Harald was racially flexible, contrary to an elite group of beings residing on Elbaph's heaven realm. A war erupted between the two, resulting in Harald's death and Loki stealing the Ragnir and eating the legendary devil fruit, making him the Hellfire Serpent that is said to have burned the first world, and hence his desire to end the world. The arc's antagonists are the gods of the Heaven Realm, along with God's Knights. Elbaph will be destroyed by the end of the arc, with the Straw Hats and other key players barely managing to escape. It's safe to assume Loki is one of the survivors and ultimately a good guy, tagging along with the Straw Hats for the final war, as the Harley mural suggests. I'll be releasing more One Piece related content, so stay tuned for that. Take care of yourself so that you don't miss it.